What's going on, guys? This is Aaron from Departures Capital, and we're here with John Feneck, CEO of Feneck Consulting and Portfolio Manager in the mining sector. It's a pleasure to have you on today, John, especially with precious metals doing what they're doing right now. It's very exciting. So I feel like this is the moment we've been waiting for. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great, Aaron. Thanks for having me back, and I totally agree. It's nice to see some green on the screen.
Yes, we've talked about it for long enough, finally. So, you know,
Mhm.
what have you been up to since we last spoke?
Well, we post our performance every quarter on our website, fennecconsulting.com. So we look at GDXJ as sort of our benchmark. We have more in the junior space than we do in the large cap space, although I'm agnostic to capitalization. And we beat, I think, by about 600 basis points in the first quarter. But since April 1st has kicked off, we're well ahead of the indexes because I really positioned, as you know, through appearing on your show last year so many times, talking about the junior space and how bombed out it was versus the mid tiers and the seniors, right? And so, like, we really spent a lot of time researching a lot of these companies from I'd say, like the spring or summer of last year, all the way through Christmas time. And we just loaded up on a lot of names that are now paying dividends. And I think they're going to pay a lot more dividends as the year unfolds. So I encourage people to do your due diligence on these stocks. Don't sell too early. I know it
Hmm.
sounds crazy because some of these things have moved like 100% already. But just look at the RSI, for example, the relative strength index. Look at different metrics on the stocks that you own to make sure that you don't sell too early, because remember, this has been a downturn that's lasted from summer of 2020 to now, pretty much, with a number of head fakes in between.
Definitely. So, it's pretty clear now that precious metals have broken out. The environment's looking very promising. How are you feeling, and which companies should we be looking at?
Yeah. So I mean, gold speaks for itself. We won't waste too much time there. It's just been ripping higher. We're around 2350 as we record this. I think gold is going higher from here. It is having a little trouble with the 2400 range, which is normal. It's been a huge move off of 2100, let's call it. Silver, as you know, is my largest holding, but I don't really talk about that much because I've been actually pretty negative on your show about silver all of last year. In fact, I said a few times it wouldn't cross 26, and it didn't. This time around, I feel differently. We crossed through 26 an ounce very easily a few weeks ago. And that is very significant when you're looking at technicals because, when you bump up on 26 multiple months in a row and can't get through, that's significant resistance, right? The next significant resistance level, you've got some between 28 and 29, but 30 is that big round number that myself and a bunch of people are looking at.
Mhm.
If we cross 30 on a few closes, it's go time. And you want to have your silver equity positions built now. If you don't build the whole thing now, that's fine. But build some now because it's moving faster than people expect, right? Um, and so to give you some names in both of those areas, silver, you know, um, as you know, I've been a fan of Mike Williams and Aftermath for a couple of years now, and I have made some bad entry points and some great entry points. And in fact, I've talked about some of those on your show. I think the last two times I talked about it on your show, we were at 14 and 17 respectively. We're now at 21 US, that is. And they had phenomenal news February 29th, which talked about their manganese being battery grade. And that means that will add a lot of potential revenue to the company going forward and also diversify them away from just silver and copper into another commodity like manganese, which, by the way, is about 92% produced in China. So there aren't a lot of manganese deposits in North America. So this is a real game changer. That's the company's words, not mine, in terms of what it means for the company in general. And I would agree. I don't even know how it's still at 21 US, honestly. I think it topped out around 25 or 26 here just a week ago, pulled back a little like everything else. Guanajuato silver, I started to get more interested in this year because it got crushed. It went down to under 11 cents US. I mean, I talked to James and the company a number of times during that period in January and February, and it was a real head scratcher. So we built a nice position between 11 and 14 in that stock. It's now at 17 and a half. I think there's still a lot of upside. I bought it as high as 19 and a half here recently. They have 4 producing silver mines. I mean, if you look at their production growth, it's headed in the right direction, but also look at the fact that their all-in sustaining cost was in that 22 and a half range per ounce, right? So when you're at 24, 25 silver, that's a little bit problematic because you're not making much upside, right? But
Mhm.
now at 28 plus silver, you're making bank. And if this continues, a company like that has a lot of leverage to the price of silver. Another one that we've that mentioned on your show before that also has a lot of leverage is SilverX. SilverX is AGXPF. They just got done with the financing, just like Aftermath did. In fact, I talked to Jose the day that was closing, and he said, "Man, we took in 2.5 million Canadian today." So, to have a financing that was, put out there to subscribe to 2 million Canadian, and then end up closing at 5 million, that shows you that there's some really big players that like what they're doing there. I've said this on your show before, but last year when I was at a dinner with Jose, he had Adrian Day there, he had Brian London, he had Chen Lin. I mean, these are all big names in mining owning the stock. And Peru to me is just a value manager's dream, right? I mean, Castillo was a nightmare for the region. He is now in jail. That was 16 months ago news, guys. I mean, it's time to move on and look at some of these Peruvian stocks and say, man, silver, copper, these commodities in Peru are a big part of their GDP. So, I get it why there would be trepidation a couple of years ago to invest in a region like that, but now I think times have changed. So moving away from silver and into gold, if you'd like, there's a couple of things I'd like to point out there. So obviously, the last couple of years, Aaron, have been really challenging from a jurisdictional perspective, and that has really, I think, as a good investor, you need to change with the times, right? I was in some things in Mexico, Nicaragua, like different places that I didn't think would have these problems that did have problems over the last 12 or 18 months. So I'm not saying I'm not going back to those regions. I still own assets there, but I like places like the US and Canada, because, or just, jurisdictions that aren't really problematic, in my opinion, like Sweden,
Mhm.
where there's just not a lot of investor interest yet, but there will be. Let me give you an example. So in South Dakota, for example, not far from where I live here, you've got a governor named Christy Nome. Christy is basically one of Trump's VP candidates. She is very pro mining. It is a very good mining state, maybe one of the top 3, I'd say, in the U.S. When you look at what mines exist there, there's one called Homestake that goes back to the 1800s, and Dakota Gold, which trades on the New York Stock Exchange, symbols DC, is something we just started to get interested in last month because the stock's trading at, again, close to a 2 to 3 year low. I talked to the CEO. Jonathan's a really sharp guy. There's just not a reason why this should be trading down here. And when you look at geographically where they're at, it's a great region. I mean, it's really just a number. There's a number of upside potential, metrics going on with that stock. And then you look at the list of shareholders. I mean, their chairman is Bob Quartermain. Bob and I are the keynote speakers at a conference in DC together, coming up in about 10 days. I've never met him, but I'll be introducing myself. I mean, Bob what built his name around Silver Standard, if you remember, and owns like 9% of Dakota Gold. So when you see stuff like that, some of their other shareholders are Fidelity, Vanguard, BlackRock. It's like, okay, this is a real stock. Like, I don't know why it's trading here, but it is. And so as a value manager, you have to say, I'm going to take a position in this and then build it over time. Close to that, there's another company I just started to track called Badlands Resources. And again, in that same part of South Dakota, where there's proven, mining, success, run by a geo named Dale Ginn. And Dale has just a 30-year type career in mining. His son's in a geo as well. Very sharp. We just talked twice for the first time this week, and very tight share structure on that stock, 11.2 million shares out. So, I look for that in some of the names. Dakota, for that matter, has 100 million shares out, fully diluted. So again, nothing huge. So that's one region that I would pay some attention to. And just to add, like Core, which is a symbol CDE, has the Wharf mine right nearby all of that too. So, you know, there's a lot of success going on in certain pockets of the world, and you kind of have to look at that sometimes and say, I can invest in one region like this and do quite well. Um, I mentioned Sweden. I'll just throw this out because I just met with this team as well. Um, Barcel was the former name. It's now called First Nordic. I have to look up the ticker here, FNMCF. So I talked to a board member as well as the CEO this week for about an hour. They have closing in on 3 million ounces of gold. Their primary projects in Sweden, their backup projects in Finland. I see them trying to focus more on Sweden. They have a relationship with Agnico AEM, and Agnico has already put 55 million plus into this project. So there's a lot of value in the ground there. And again, when you see a project that's trading in a good jurisdiction with a great partner like that, and it's trading where it is, you just say to yourself, like at 15 US, what is my risk here? It goes to 10, sure, I could lose some money, but the upside's 30, 40 cents US, I think, in a 12-month period. And it's just amazing to see these stocks still trading at these levels, considering where gold is. It's
Mhm.
unbelievable. Maybe the name sometimes doesn't like give you an indication of what a company may be looking for or exploring for. But I was very impressed with that first meeting with these guys. They're very sharp, and I think they're going to get it done.
Awesome. Well, thanks for all that information. So now let's talk about inflation. So with inflation picking up, unfortunately, what are your thoughts on rates?
Yeah, I mean, we saw CPI on April 10th tick up 0.1%. I didn't see it as big of a deal as the market saw it, but clearly the Fed is not going to be happy with that, right? Because they have a 2% mandate. Powell has said this over and over and over again. It's like the biggest broken record in history, right? So you have to respect it though, because look at what's happened with the expectations for rate cuts, since we last talked.
Mhm.
When we last talked, it was almost in the bag. May 1st or the June meeting, we were going to get a cut, right? I mean, that was the plan.
Mhm.
Well, May 1st has got no chance of a cut, so that's positive for gold and silver minor investors, because there's no chance Powell's going to surprise us unless we go to World War III, God forbid, before then. And basically June 12th now is looking like a 12% probability, maybe 14% of a rate cut. So I think June's off the table at the moment, and that part of that is because of the hot CPI number, the hot non-farm payrolls number that came in just before CPI beat significantly, over 300,000 new jobs created. So I think you're going to see a year where we were talking Jan 1 about four, many shops were even at five rate cuts, 125 basis points. I think now we may get two this year. And if we get two, I don't think the broad market's going to really absorb that well. And maybe we can talk a little bit about the broad market.
Yeah, for sure. So, with the broader indexes starting to pull back, precious metals going up, what's your current outlook for that?
Yeah, today was one of the first days I saw some definitive decoupling. That means gold and silver did quite well today. Even GDX was up 1%. Yet the Nasdaq got killed. It was down over
Mhm.
2%. And that's what you look for. And I've said this on your show many times. That kind of decoupling is what you look for to get more excited about being invested in this sector, right? You want the world to start viewing our sector as a safer haven, and it
Mhm.
is. And it's not just retail money, it's institutional money now. And the Ray Dalios, the Stanley Druckenmillers, these guys are big players with big influence. And as you start seeing more people pile in and get behind our narrative, I think it's extremely positive. you know so when you look at the SPY, the QQQ, terrible day. And I own nothing there, so I'm very excited by that. And I think we need to see more reality checks in the broad market, and I think we're going to see that as the year unfolds.
Agreed. Also don't own any of that. So today was very happy. It was a very happy day. So is there anything else you're currently looking at?
Yeah, I'd say, you know, don't just look at what the commodity is doing. Look deeper than that, and I'll give you a couple of examples. Copper has been breaking out, right? Yet copper juniors are doing nothing for the most part. That's an opportunity to go buy copper juniors if you missed the copper move, and by that I mean the ETF CPER, which tracks the price of copper. Look at that chart; it looks beautiful, right? The large cap stuff, COPX, is the big cap ETF that already broke out. Look at some of the copper mid tiers and juniors, and you can still find a ton of value. VR Resources, VRR in Canada, VRRCF in the US. That stock is on our radar. We loaded up in the Q4 between 4 and 5 cents US. It's trading at 11 and a half US right now. It did hit about 17 US about a month or two ago. And then it did financing, so it got knocked down a little bit, but it was a very small financing. Like, I don't understand why everyone gets so crazy about. They have to look at the size of a financing sometimes. Like when you see 20-30 million dollars, then yes, I understand that's going to be a big overhang. But I think they did like $1 million financing. It was nothing, right? So that allows them to drill New Boston, which is their copper project in Nevada, and I think they're going to do extremely well there. Copper's hot, as you can tell from like what's happening with Hercules. You know, Nevgold just put out a great press release this week about being 20 kilometers from the big Hercules, discovery. That stock's responded as well. So, and then look at a commodity like nickel, which has done the opposite of copper, right? Nickel has done, I think nickel was down about 40 to 43% last year as a commodity, which is nuts.
Yeah.
Power Nickel, if you know Terry Lynch, Canadian who heads up this organization called Save Canadian Mining, is something I'm passionate about. Terry and I are also presenting together at this conference in Washington, D.C. in about 10 days. But look at that stock, PNPN in Canada, PNPNF in the States. It's decoupled from other nickel stocks. Why? Because number one, Terry's got a real deposit. Number two, Terry hasn't blown up the share structure. Number three, he came out with great news this week on what I consider a really good hole that shows that this is not just nickel, this is platinum as well. So look at what happened with the share price, right? I've been talking to you about naked shorting and all this for at least 2 years now. That stock is heavily shorted. The shorts got crushed over the last 2 or 3 days. It went from 16 cents US to 26 cents US. I don't know where it closed today, but that's a nice move in 2 or 3 days, right? And this is the opportunity in our sector, is to identify companies that are well run, that have real deposits, that are getting naked shorted or just actually shorted in the market, and then take the other side of the trade.
Definitely, John. Well, thank you for all that info. I love chatting mining and mining stocks with you, precious metals and all of that. Also like to get your opinion on other things, but we can save that for our next video. So hopefully when we have you on again, the prices continue to go up and we can do some celebrating or something.
Would love that.
All right, John. Well, have a great day and thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.